right, people, welcome to another And My Dog Barks right as I go into the intro, which is wonderful, wonderful comedic timing. All right, everybody, it's time for another episode of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best podcast, talking about new metal and the new metal lifestyle, because it isn't just a genre, it is a lifestyle. I'm one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horsecow, with me calling from an undisclosed federal witness protection program location, my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how's it going?
Great, man. I'm exhausted though.
Well, we'll try to make sure we keep it exciting, keep you up. And joining us this week is our special guest, bassist of the band Pressure 405, Lyle McKeany. Lyle, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
We are so stoked to have you. And before we started recording, Tim, Lyle and I were talking about how he went back and he listened to the Elias from Nonpoint episode where Elias brought up his band. And then I talked about how it was just kind of serendipity. I happened to pull up our Twitter account and I saw that Sean from New Metal Reddit tagged Lyle. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll have Lyle on. Hey, maybe he'd be interested in having a conversation. So I guess we'll start off, Lyle, with I went back and listened today, right, to the whole album front to back at least twice. And man, you guys put together a solid album. Like that was a solid rock album. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I still really like it. I love how my bass sounds on it. It sounded like pretty epic. So no, we had a great time doing the album, working with Jay Baumgartner. He's the same producer that worked with Papa Roach and Alien Ant Farm and a bunch of other bands, but we were good friends with all those guys. And so, yeah, we were trying to like recreate the Papa Roach formula that helped them blow up, and it didn't quite work out, but we had an awesome experience, and, you know, doing the album in a big fancy studio and playing with all the different toys they had and, you know, just dialing in the sound. It was a really cool experience.
And you were at NRG? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Burbank. Yeah.
When I seen the price of that record, I was like, wow.
Yeah, right.
Like how much it costs to record it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of obscene, to be honest.
Well, but that was the old days, right, Lyle? Like that was when, you know, $1 million advances, $500,000 advances were not unheard of. 6 record deals were not unheard of. And you know, you guys really, you guys were the equivalent of buying the house right at the top of the market. You came in right at the point where everybody was giving the most, but they were also pulling the most on the other side. And then here comes Mr. Internet and Mr. Napster, and then just throws it all right throws everything we knew right out the window.
Totally. I mean, it was not that many years ago. I saw the guitarist from Dredge, Mark, and he was playing with this other band, Black Map. And we were talking about it, and he was like, how crazy was it that like we all got these deals that we did? Because like you fast forward like a year or two from when we signed, and nobody was getting those deals. They just totally disappeared, right? So it was just purely just like good timing. And it's funny because I look back at the time, and there was definitely bad timing when it came to us. Our single hit radio only like a couple days before 9/11, right? So obviously that, you know, puts a huge damper on our promotional efforts. But you know, but on the flip side, you know, we would have never had that deal had it happened, you know, had we been on the market, you know, looking for a deal a couple of years prior or a couple of years later. It was just good timing, you know. That being said, like looking, you know, this is probably maybe 5-6 years ago, I came across the actual like document for the record contract. And it's kind of crazy that we signed it because it's like we were basically nobodies, you know, at the time. You know, we had a decent following, but nothing that big. And you know, weren't really known outside of California even that much. You know, but we signed a 2-album guaranteed deal, and then the label had options for like 2 or 3 more plus a greatest hits album, which I was like, that's just crazy that the word greatest hits was even in that contract. You know what I mean? It makes no sense. But that's the world we were in at that time. And, you know, I imagine the deals look a little bit different nowadays, you know. Well, I know they also have like 360 deals where it's like they're getting a cut of every single thing. Where we, you know, we pocketed all the money from our merch. We give a cut to our managers, but that was about it. You know, otherwise it was just cash in our pockets. but yeah, those deals have changed a lot, you know.
Yeah, it's not like that anymore. Tim and I were talking about the other day. There was an interview with, I think it was Dave Shivari from Il Nino, talking about they got a $500,000 advance plus everything else. And our buddy Adam was just looking at us like, wait, Il Nino? We're like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, dude, 5 band members, the dude with the bongos, he got $100,000, and Adam is just sitting there shaking his head. So to the start of the band, you guys were all college friends, college buddies?
Yeah, kind of. It's funny. I don't actually remember the name of the guy. There was a guy I was like in a chemistry class with, or like a lab, and we got partnered together. He played guitar, and he's like, "Hey, I'm jamming at my house this weekend with some friends. Want to come over?" Because he found out I played bass. So I said, "Yeah, sure." And so then, like, I could not even pick out the guy out of a lineup these days. I don't know who he is, but so we go to his house, and there's some other guys there. One of them was the drummer. Jake Fowler, who was our original drummer, and you know, he kind of pulled me aside because we were kind of locked in and it felt good. And he was like, "Hey, I just jammed with this other band, but their bass player is not very good, but seems like they're pretty serious, and you know, you might be into it." And so a couple of weeks later, he called me and he said, "Yeah, they let the bass player go," and you know, so the rest, you know, I jammed with them. We hit it off pretty quickly. I knew they were pretty serious, and I wanted to be pretty serious about it too. So yeah, we were off to the races at that point. Eventually Jake was not in the band, but he had like an injury. He had tendonitis in his wrist or something, if I remember right. And we had just signed a deal, and his doctor goes, "You need to take a year off from drumming." And we're like, "Well, that's not happening, you know." We just signed a deal, we're going, you know. And so we got a studio guy to do the album. This guy Brooks Wackerman, which is like the greatest drummer name ever.
Yeah, was it what else was he on, Lyle?
He's been on a bunch of stuff,
Primus or Helmet or Quicksand? Like I want to say something in that area, in that milieu.
He plays with Bad Religion.
Okay.
He's been like their go-to drummer for a long time.
Okay.
And he's done a bunch of other projects, but yeah, so he came in and laid down all the tracks, and that guy was just unbelievable. I mean, we felt like, you know, he's an actual musician. We aren't, is kind of how it felt, you know. He was unbelievable. But and then I actually offered the drumming gig, like once we hit the road and stuff, to my brother. And because he still is a really good drummer. But he was in another band and he turned it down, which I imagine there's a little bit of regret on his part at this point.
I would think so, yeah.
But then because the other band never really went anywhere. Although I ended up joining that band later on, and I like a lot of the music we made, but it was, you know, on the industry was changing a lot, like we were talking about, so it was hard to get it going. But ultimately, we got one of our guitarists, Joe, his brother Tom Schmidt, joined us when we started hitting the road and everything.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And if my timeline serves me correctly, right? Because I remember seeing you guys, I think it was 2001, Ozzfest. Everything moved for you very quickly. Like it was EP, record deal, Ozzfest, and you were off to the races, right? Like was that like a whirlwind? Like what?
In a way,
like wake up on a bus and be like, dude, what is my life doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, in a way it was. Although it's funny is I look back at that time. I mean, obviously I was a lot younger, in my mid 20s, and just like the amount of confidence that we had that like it was a done deal, that we were going to get a record deal and everything, was kind of absurd, to be honest. Because it's really hard. Like I think, you know, in the years since especially when I joined the other band, we were trying to make a go of it and realizing like, you know, people were like, yeah, cool. And then you never hear back, and, you know, not necessarily like doors slammed in your face, but just kind of like not really open for you to walk through, you know?
Right.
It made me realize like, oh crap, like what we did was, you know, not typical, right? It's really, really hard to get to that level. So yeah, I mean, it was in a way it felt slow, but it was because we had been grinding for a while, just like playing our own gigs and, you know, booking our own gigs and recording stuff on our own, you know, paying out of pocket for that type of stuff, you know, working odd jobs to try to make ends meet, pay the bills and all that. But yeah, I would like, now looking back, like you mentioned, it was kind of fast, you know. We started doing, like, we did the EP. Let's see, we did the EP on our own, and then we randomly got connected with with our manager. It was like that drummer I mentioned, Jake. It was like his neighbor knew the guy because he grew up in Santa Barbara where we lived, and they were him. So it was two managers, and I think they still run this label called Side One Dummy, which is they do a lot of punk rock type stuff. Like they did the soundtrack for like Warped Tour and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so they weren't managing bands, so we were the first band that they managed. But they had like tons of contacts, you know, and it was one of those things where once they were on board, we were like, okay, here's what we want to do. They basically sat us down. They said, okay, you could go about this two ways, at least at that time. You go the major label route, right, where you just like go big or go home, and you're going to try to get a big deal and have a hit single type thing, or you could go the indie route, and it's going to be a lot slower going, but you can maybe have like a little bit more staying power if things don't go well, and you can just kind of plod along and build an audience more organically over time. And we were like, well, obviously we're going to go big or go home. It's like, especially because around that time, I think it was right around then.
Technical difficulties here, folks, as Lyle plugs himself back in. It's great audio podcast.
There you are.
There we go. Hey, back
I
to
hit
the
mute
gorillas.
button. Didn't know there was a mute button on my microphone. So where was I?
You did the EP. You were given the option of going two ways: go big or go home, or do the grind. And you said, "Well, why wouldn't we go big or go
like
home?"
we're gonna go big, right? Like, so we saw our buddies in Papa Roach. They were, I think it was right around that time when they like their single hit Radio Last Resort, and it just went nuts. They sold something like 3 million albums in 2 months, and so we're like, well, that's what we want to do, it's like, that's what you do, right? And and not only that, but we thought our single Beat the World, we thought it had a shot at being like doing really well on the radio, and not, it was maybe one of our more accessible songs. There were a couple, and that was one of them. That was definitely like the song that got us signed, like we recorded that song so many times to try to just like dial it in just right, So once we had the managers on board, though, they were like, okay, well, we're going to get you in the studio to do like a little short, I guess it was an EP, or it was basically like, let's tighten up some of the songs, and then take that and pitch it around, and get a little bit better sound out of it. And so we re-recorded some songs that we had in the past, but they just sounded a lot better because we were in like a real studio in LA.
Right, and pros helping you.
Yeah. So so they pitched that around, and yeah, pretty quickly after that we got some bites. So DreamWorks was the first, and then after that it slowly, just like a bunch of other labels jumped on board, but we ended up going with DreamWorks because they were the first one, and like the other deals were like very similar. So
right. It's not like it's not like there was a glaring difference between like Geffen, DreamWorks, Universal, right? They were all kind of in the same ballpark. Okay.
Yeah. And we were like, well, they were the first ones to go like, yes, we want to sign you guys. So we thought that, and plus like I was saying, our friends were on the label, and Papa Roach and some others. So we thought, okay, well, this is probably our best bet. But yeah, so then, it did move pretty quickly after that. Like we signed the deal in late. Actually, I won't ever forget the date. It was really easy to remember. It was 11/22/00. So November 22nd, 2000, we signed the deal. And then the album came out October of the following year, but it was get in the studio. Well, we had to find the drummer first. So we got in the studio, recorded the album pretty quickly, and then like shot a video, all that kind of stuff, did a bunch of kind of promo things, played Ozzfest. So we played Ozzfest in August. So it was before the album came out, before the single even hit radio. And then, like I said, the single hit radio, then 9/11 happened, which, But yeah, so it was definitely a whirlwind. And it is interesting because even when we toured, we only toured for like maybe a year, maybe a little over a year, off and on, but so it is like in the grand scheme of my life, a pretty short amount of time, but it was such a cool and unique experience that it's like, something I think about quite a bit,
Yeah, that's kind of wild. I mean, the you paid, what was it, Ozzfest 2001? That was when I look back at the lineups and I compared to the year prior and the year after. That was the last year that was truly when they were still pushing new metal, right? Like, because with you, you had Mudvayne, you had the Union Underground, Taproot, Systematic, Nonpoint, Drowning Pool, Spineshank, but then you have like Hatebreed sneaking on. Right. And then they've got you guys, and they got Pure Rubbish and No One and Godhead and Disturbed and Crazy Town, which is, I saw Crazy Town and they almost got booed off the stage. And I think it was because of that. I love Crazy Town. I love that first down, but that Refused cover's got to go. And then they had, Papa Roach and Slipknot. But then when you look at the year after, right? Yeah, you have your new metal bands, you have your what do we got? Soil, Flow, Third Strike, Pulse Ultra, but then you have Glassjaw shows up, Down, Hatebreed, Meshuggah, right? Like the winds are changing direction. And I remember for me, the 2001, that was the year that they actually gave away tickets if you pre-ordered Iowa. So I got free tickets from Sam Goody, and that was the first time I remember Ozzfest having 3 stages. Right, it was the main stage, the second stage, and the third. But that was, how did that come about, Lyle? Was it a label buy-on? Was it they approached you? How did that work?
I'm pretty sure it was a label buy-on, but okay. I honestly, I don't really know. But that would be my guess. Because it was like right before everything was going to hit the ground running for us, and they were spending a lot of money generally. So.
So let me ask you this, Lyle, when you were on that tour, like, what are the bands that jumped out at you where you were just like, holy shit, like we're sharing the stage with these guys? I mean, like, these guys are a machine. Well, who were the ones that in your memory jump out at you?
Yeah, I mean, Slipknot was one for sure. Because we had seen them a number of times down in LA, and just were blown away. And I was a huge fan of their first album. And, and they had gone platinum with that music, which is kind of insane in retrospect. When I heard that, I was like, what? Gold's one thing, but then platinum, I was like, that's unreal. Obviously it doesn't happen today. But so that was cool. And, our buddies in Papa Roach and Linkin Park, I really liked their stuff back then. And we got to hang out with them a little bit. Even like Marilyn Manson, he was on the tour too. I don't know. He's not the most beloved figure in the world right now, but
he still puts on an amazing, credit where credit is due.
It was incredible to watch.
They put on an amazing stage show. Always have. Yeah.
So but then there was some of the, we met the guys at Nonpoint, like that. They were really good. They became really good friends of ours. Taproot, we did off dates with them. But I was already familiar with them because they were so active online at the time, which was kind of not the norm back then. They built a good sized following just online before they even signed their record deal and stuff. And I had heard about them back then, before they got their deal and all that, just from being online a lot. Because I did a lot of our online stuff. I built our website back in the day, and I managed our message board and stuff, which was, I guess, a form of social media back then. And then when we were on the road, I did our tour diary and stuff, which nowadays you would call a blog, I guess.
No, but I remember when those were a thing. Those were a thing. It was a big deal that, Lyle was posting from the bus. Here's what we did. Funnily enough, Tim and I were just talking about Lyle. I just picked up J.S. Clayton from Pitch Shifter. They did a tour diary when they were out with, it was, I think it was Junkie XL and Cold. And they actually printed, he literally printed off the pages from the website, had them typed up, and they put it into a book. It was pretty neat. But yeah, cool. People don't younger generations, I will say, don't realize how wild and mind blowing that was. Hey, I'm interacting with the guy who's actually in the band.
Yeah. Our message board was really active, I remember. And I'm kind of glad it doesn't exist anymore, because I probably said some things that could be taken out of context or inappropriate. But yeah, I think we definitely got that, where people were just like, whoa, it's Lyle from the band, or it's Adam, the singer, or whatever. And then even when we would go to a city we'd never been to, there'd be some people there because they knew about us from the website, right?
Mhm.
And then they meet us in person, and it was like sometimes awkward, just like awkward fan interaction where,
The
and I'm like,
Punishers. Yep.
it's kind of crazy to me that like I felt like such a nobody at the time, but there was still someone out there that was like looking up to me in some way,
Yeah,
Um,
especially when you're that young, it's got to be like, what is going on? Like, I was just in high school.
yeah, totally. Yeah. Like I just dropped out of college. Yeah.
Right, right. And I, I went back and again, like I said, I listened to the album a couple times today. And I mean, first of all, the talent is obviously there, right? Like you guys were super talented, but I would even go as far as to say is you were, we talk in marketing about like first mover advantage, right? Like first one to market is usually one that wins. However, when it comes to creative arts, I really don't think first mover is usually the winner
No.
because people aren't ready for it. And when I listened to that album, and then you listen to stuff that came after it, right? The Chevelles and the Breaking Benjamins and all that sort of stuff, right? You guys were proto that, right? You were one of the first bands that did it and did it well. And it's just, I think the winds were changing, but what does he say in Back to the Future? You guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are going to love it. Like, I just think you guys were maybe too far ahead of the curve for unfortunately, right? Because that's a well-produced album. Tim, what did you think when you gave it a listen?
Yeah, I listened to it all day yesterday while installing a floor, and I was just like, I don't even think this is a new record. Like Jay said, it's like a rock record. It's like a really well-written rock record to me, which I highly enjoy. Because I mean, I've heard it before, but like now that we're going back and listening to all this stuff, like I was like, damn, this is a great record. Like, and then Jay was like, yeah, it's a rock record. I'm like, it is. Like, it's really good though, man. I didn't hear the EP before that though. I obviously didn't even know there was an EP before that, but I gotta go find it now. I don't know if it was on my Apple Music. I gotta look for that though.
No, it's definitely not.
I seen it
you
was
can find it on YouTube.
Or something. I was like, all right, that's definitely obscure right there. So
Yeah, so the EP, like the one we did on our own, was called and Technology.
yeah.
But it's on YouTube and stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, there was definitely, I would say, in the EP, maybe a little bit more of the like rock rap type of style. There's definitely times where he rapped, and we also had one of our guitarists, Joe Schmidt. At the time, he actually like DJ'd for us, and he made random sounds and stuff like that. He saw us play our very first show and came up to us and said, "Hey, do you guys want to DJ?" And we're like, "I don't know, sure." So he just showed up, and he would just goof off and do different sounds. And then that's actually where the name came from, the 4/5 part.
I was just gonna bring that up. I remember about that. He would like show up once in a while.
Yeah, he just like wouldn't show up sometimes, even to shows and stuff. So we're like, well, I guess we don't have our DJ today. But at least with that, it was like not a super essential part of the music. And then very quickly we were kind of like not really into the whole DJ thing. It became a little cliche. And but he played guitar, and so once he started playing guitar, he showed up all the time. And the funny thing is, like, it's interesting that he was into DJing because he was the guy in the band that was into the most heavy stuff. Like he loved that Hatebreed was on Ozzfest with that. He watched like every single set he could, and like I liked their stuff, but I wasn't like super into it. Like at the time, I was like going almost the other direction, and I was getting into kind of weird stuff. Like I was listening, I was kind of obsessed with Bjork at the time, which is, I don't know. I still like her stuff, but it's just a lot different,
Right.
And like within, if you can count this band within this genre, like my favorite band at the time that we played with and knew was Dredge, and they're still one of my favorites. So it's a little bit, I guess I was more on like the artsy, like emotional side of the spectrum when it came to music, as opposed to just pure like adrenaline, like hard,
lower your head and hit something. Yep.
Yeah. Nothing against that stuff, but what was that, Tim?
So you were a White Pony fan back then, right?
Oh yeah, loved that album. I mean, I still love that album.
That's the direction that record was in. It was like the more artsy stuff. So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
actually,
when your record came out, like that's right around when like Napster started like killing artists and stuff. Did you guys see like any like problems with that at first? Because I know like that's when leaks were starting to get real big. Like Nas's record, I know that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but like the Nas record got killed from that. because it was like one of the big first leaks. And you guys being on DreamWorks, I'm sure like people tried to get stuff like that out there. Did that happen to you guys?
I'm sure it happened to a certain extent. I mean, I saw like when I saw that paperwork that I have in like a file in my garage with our record deal and all that, I found this file that we had gotten from our PR firm, and they had like clips of interviews we did and stuff. I was kind of flipping through that, and we got asked about Napster quite a bit back then in interviews and stuff, because it was like that was the big news at the time.
Yeah.
And like our answer at the time was basically, we don't really care, we just want people to hear our stuff, you know. And like we want to go to shows and people know us and know our stuff, and want to, you know, buy a t-shirt or buy the CD from us, and or just spread the word, you know, because we were just sort of like in audience building mode at that point. So it's just like anyone and everyone listened to it, you know. Yeah,
the more people with our shirts on, the better.
Exactly, right?
Yeah,
the more people
totally.
who can show up and sing the lyrics as we're playing is big. There was an article, I think it got turned into the book, How Music Got Free, where it talked about how most of those major label leaks were from one guy at a CD pressing plant in like Ohio, who he was interviewed, and he talked about how, like, you know, he'd be working and he'd realize that he's pressing the new Britney Spears album and it's a Friday night and it doesn't come out till next Tuesday, but he would take it to like a party and everybody would be like, yo, is this the new Britney Spears album? It's like, yeah, I got it from work. So like that, so the loose, lax, secure, like imagine that would be the equivalent today of like Lyle working for Apple. And like we see him at a party on Friday. I'm like, yo, is that the iPhone 432? And Lyle's like, yeah, you know, I stole it for work. That's the equivalent back then,
Yeah.
right? And it totally it changed everything overnight. You know, it's funny, Lyle. I'm sitting here looking at the lineup, and when you point out Hatebreed was the outlier on that tour, because they were by far the most aggressive and like hardcore that of all the other bands. And then when
they were sort of veterans too, right? Like they had been
they
around
toured for
a
like
while,
a
right?
year and a half off that. What was it, like 2 years, Tim? 3 years off of Satisfaction? They toured forever off that thing.
Oh my God.
And then when you look like, okay, so then they came back the next year and they brought Meshuggah, and then Down, and then you had like Glassjaw, which was the turn into like, I know I'm going to say
like
Screamo, and Tim's going to lean through the screen and fucking punch me, but you know, that post, what did you call it, Tim? Post hardcore, whatever you called it last episode when you were yelling at me. But I mean, it's things got weird, and you know, you had some serious contemporaries. So let me ask you this, Lyle, what happened? You guys got a deal? You know, you toured Ozzfest, you had an album come out. I mean, granted, 9/11 screwed everybody, right? It screwed System of a Down, Slipknot, Machine Head. Everybody had albums come out right around that time and they got killed. What happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was a big factor, but who knows? I mean, maybe that doesn't happen and the album still doesn't take off. You know, you never really know with these things, right? But like, I'm curious to get your guys' take on this, because I put this out on Twitter recently, and I've talked to some friends about it. But I was trying to think of new bands post 9/11 that were heavier, that got really big, like mainstream big, and I can't think of any. You know, like, because before 9/11 there was like obviously like the really big bands like the Korn or Deftones and I mean Tool even, right? Like that were like played on mainstream radio. But after 9/11 I can't think of any that are like really big that are heavier, that like have heavier music. And I'm part of me wonders if it was like the mood of the country changed in some way, or like the world, I guess, but mostly the US as far as just aggressive music goes. But I could be wrong. I don't know. And maybe there's someone that's going to say something. I'll go, oh yeah, duh. But like even like a Linkin Park, I mean, they're obviously huge, but they came out before that.
Yeah, and not. I wouldn't call them heavy by any stretch of the
imagination. No, but I mean, they're heavier than the average song you would hear on like a top 40 radio, right?
But also at that point, Lyle, you were used to that, because here you have Godsmack and you have Disturbed and you have stuff that was Stained, right? 2001 is when Break the Cycle, I think, comes out. You have that the palette for radio music was acceptable, that you could have a couple of guitars and a little bit screamy vocals and you can get away with it. But heavier, I'm looking now at like the stuff that came out after that, and no, that's when, I mean, what'd you say, Tim?
Kill Switch Engage.
Yeah, but Yeah, but even Killswitch took another 2-3 years, right? They had to lose Jesse, get Howard. Like when I think of like the metalcore stuff, that was 2003, 2004 that's when they planted the flag, right? It was Shadows Fall, it was Chimera.
But
I don't
still, like
know.
they were never on like, you know, a top 40 radio station or anything like that, you know.
No.
But they got big. I mean, no doubt they got big. But I was thinking of like, you know, you would be listening like in Santa Barbara, at least we'd have like our main radio station. It was sort of, I guess, rock leaning, but you would hear Korn and stuff like that all the time. It's like that would never happen these days, you know, a band.
Mm-mm.
I mean, say what you will about Korn, whether you're a fan or not, but like, you know, that's like he's screaming and, you know, there's like heavy distorted guitars in it. Like that just doesn't happen that much, I think, post 9/11. So I think that's definitely part of it. You know, and then for us, it became a money thing. Honestly, it was like, you know, we released one other single for Melt Me Down, but it had like way less money behind it. And honestly, like in retrospect, we probably should have gone with this other song called Pieces, because I think it had a little bit more of a chance of doing well on radio, but who knows?
That's the best song on the record, by the way. I love that song.
Yeah, I really like that one too. Yeah.
And
We argued about that a lot.
And it's further into the record too, and it's like a deeper cut. And I'm like, see, this is where the gems are always hidden. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
totally. Yeah, I really like that song. I think that one could have maybe done well. Who knows? But yeah. I mean, Melt Me Down is a good song too. I really like that one. And we were able to take, I think part of the reason we picked that is because we can make a video for it real easy. Because we had done this show in Denver with, we played with Alien Ant Farm was headlining, and we played, I think Dredge was on that show too. I'm not sure, but it got recorded for this MTV2 special called Spankin' New Music they had back then. And so like, our song Beat the World and Melt Me Down made the cut for the TV special. And so we already had the video footage for it, and we went, okay, let's splice that together with other random stuff and like shots from backstage and things. And so we were able to make a video on the cheap. So I think that was part of the reason for that. If memory serves, you know, but then after that, it was like, okay, well, we did a few more tours, and then we hung it up, and it was like, okay, drop back to the drawing board. Like, let's do the next album, because we had a 2-album guarantee. Right. And so we just started recording a bunch of stuff in our practice studio, just like throw some mics down and get a rough recording. And we would send it to our A&R guy at the label. And it would be like, great. Yeah. Just, you know, keep writing stuff. And we're like, okay, they don't like it, you know? And I just don't think, I think they were honestly just like kind of stringing us along for a while, because like we were talking about, the industry started changing in a massive way. And like for him to go to his boss and say, no, I really think we should spend all this money on this band, because they would give you another advance, right? If they go, cool, they're going to greenlight it, they'll give you another advance, go do the album, spend a year on it or whatever. Like he to have to try to sell that internally, I imagine was not going to be easy. So it was just like he needed to hear something that was like pretty clearly
right,
a hit,
yeah.
you know, or like a potential for a hit. And we just didn't have it. And then, you know, and then like I said, the one guitarist, Joe, he was getting into way heavier stuff, and he wanted to go that way, and I wanted to go a different way. And I was like, they're not going to go for that. We need to go like more mainstream if we want to keep this going, you know. So we, you know, we had some arguments there, but then ultimately I ended up leaving before they called it quits, and I joined my brother's band. Like I was telling you, we were called Ambionic, and I actually really liked the music we made, but it was definitely more along the lines of just like artsy rock type stuff, similar to Dredge in some ways. And I really liked some of the music we made, but it was just like nobody, you know, every time we threw the line in the water, nobody bit, you know.
Yeah.
But we probably could have kept at it and built, you know, a smaller like indie following. But yeah, we ended up calling it quits eventually too.
That's a grind too.
Yeah,
you know, that's a true grind. I mean, and I'm always amazed by these stories of bands that deliver music to their label, and their label is just kind of like, it's like, I know the contracts are structured in the way that they benefit the label, because that's why they do what they do. But at the same time, there should be some sort of like eject clause where if I deliver you a full album and you don't like it, part of my language, eat a dick, I'm taking it, I'm going to go somewhere else, because somebody will put it out, like, and you hear those stories of like, what is it? Dragged into Sunlight has had an album at Prosthetic for ages and they can't agree on it. So they're not going to record new stuff. So they've dead in the water of Finch. Tim and I were talking about Finch, the band Finch. They delivered their full album right after the comeback album, which I swear was great. The label didn't like it. Egos got out of the way. The band exploded again. And yet they had a full album done that if you listen to the leaks, it's actually pretty damn good. So it's like, there should be an eject clause where Lyle says, you know what? I did this and my band did this and we all like it. And if you don't like it, well, somebody's going to put it out.
Yeah, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often where they're just, even if they would, you know what, we're going to just like, we have a new band name and here's our album or something, because you do spend like a ton of time and energy and, like the cliche blood, sweat and tears on it, right? Like it's art and it's like you spend countless hours on it and trying to make it exactly like you want. And if you're in a band, you're arguing about little things, like the dumb arguments we would get in about like a part in a song, just, it could be as simple as just like this transition to a new part and we go, okay, it should go dun, dun, not dun, dun, dun or something. And we'd be like at each other's throats about that little change, but it's, the reason is because you care about it, right? And you care about the art and you want it to be as good as you want. You want it to like be in that vision of what you have in your head. But yeah, then when you send it off to the label and they're just like kind of give you the cold shoulder, it's like, but imagine that, dude, I can't even imagine the amount of records that are just on the shelf that are so good, but a label exec just said no, that's, I mean, who knows?
Or bands that like yours that had some talent and given a little bit more time to incubate probably could have done something amazing, but because they're churning, right? Because that was still when the record labels was still churning. It's kind of a karmic comeuppance with what's happened with the recording industry, not the music industry, the recording industry, right? There's kind of a karmic retribution where now it's like, well, fuck it, I'll put it on Bandcamp. I'll use what is it, CD Baby or the other system to get everything out into all the streaming sites, and we'll have a go at it. It's, there's a lot of stuff that got left on the floor that probably shouldn't have. So with that, I'll ask you, Lyle, the same question I asked Elias. What's one of the bands that you heard that you're like, in hindsight, damn, I really thought they would have been bigger. I'm really surprised it didn't work out for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of odd to say this, but Dredge, because I think Dredge could have been bigger than they were.
Okay.
I just thought they were excellent. I just really love their music. And it's like it hit for me on like from a musicianship standpoint, there was that part of it. And then they I think they got caught up in they were on the big label, and they actually, I mean, they ended up releasing more music than I kind of would have expected them to. But then they tried to do the thing where they were like, okay, we're gonna go lean a little bit more mainstream, but I still liked it. I still liked a lot of their stuff, but it just like never really took off. And I'm not exactly sure why. But I always really loved their music, and they're just really great people too. And we got to spend a lot of time with them. I'd watch every single set they play. Like just watching their drummer was like amazing. He's so good. Dino, he was awesome. But so that's definitely one of them. God, you're like testing my memory now. There's like so many bands that we play with, and like I'll hear their name and go, oh yeah, I forgot about them. There was definitely a lot of bands back then that like were not good at all and somehow did well. But
I don't want to put you on the spot and ask that question, but I'm always curious to hear like, man, how did these guys get it? Like you're looking at the stage, like, how did these guys get a deal? Like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And somebody is sacrificed a newborn or something to a record exec.
Mayhem.
It does feel that way sometimes.
Well, would you say 10 Methods of Mayhem?
It's Methods of Mayhem on the stage.
And that one live, I like that one song because it's it's everything new metal all boiled into one. You got the porn reference. You got Lil Kim riding a giant rooster with pasties. You got Fred Durst. You got George Clinton. Like, it's kind of nuts, and you can see, but at the same time, that's one of those things where, like, when I look back on pictures of me wearing Jenkos, like where me, Lyle, and Tim could fit in them upside down, it's kind of like might not have been the best choice here, guys, in hindsight.
But I'm trying to think of, there's other bands, Pulse Ultra I really liked. I remember them.
Great band.
They were so good, but they just like went nowhere. They didn't really get that big at all. But God, there was this other band I'm spacing on. They were from LA. They had 2 drummers. I can't remember.
What was Tim? Didn't we just talk about them? Was that Clown?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know that one. This one was maybe a little bit more on the artsy side, but gosh, I'm not going to remember it. Anyway,
I'm surprised more bands don't try that.
Show with too, but.
Right, Lyle? I'm surprised more bands don't try that. I'm assuming like that you need like an extra large bus and all that to transport all that shit. But Slipknot's the closest I think we're ever going to get to it. Multiple drummers on stage.
Well, I watched Chino's side project band Crosses, and Dino from Dredge played with them on tour, and they had 2 drummers, which I thought was interesting because you hear the music, you don't really think of it as having 2 drummers. But it worked really well live. It was sort of like tastefully done. It wasn't just about like cramming a bunch more notes in. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they were really fun to watch. But yeah, I'm spacing on other names right now.
No worries.
I'm sure there are plenty.
What are you listening to these days, Lyle?
Yeah, I mean, besides just like replaying stuff that I always listen to, like a typical old person. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I fluctuate between listening to stuff that's more like electronica type stuff. Like I really like this one artist, Lorne, who plays, it's like kind of dark electronic stuff.
Okay.
So I really like that. One like newer artist I like a lot is Woodkid. I don't know if you know him. It's not rock at all. It's like very, it's like kind of symphonic in a way. Like he has kind of epic string parts and stuff, and very unique voice. So I really like his stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a range. I still listen to some heavier stuff though. Like I really been Tool I've listened to forever. Although, you know, what's funny is back when I was in the band, I wasn't into them that much. But I've like gained more appreciation for them over the years, you know? And, you know, I actually just saw them live for the first time in January of 2020. So right before
everything shut down. Yeah.
Yeah. So my brother and I went and watched them in Vegas because he lives out in Vegas, and got to see them in January of 2020. And it was like, I mean, it was so good.
Oh, they no matter what you know, everybody makes fun of the band, the fans, and all that sort of stuff. There's no denying they have some serious musical talent. I mean, there's no denying it. Maynard's a bit of an interesting dude, but they have some very, very serious.
I mean, I could just watch their drummer all day, every day. He's just unreal.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny though, because right before one song, the Maynard said something because they were going to play like an older track. And he said that, you know, he asked people to stand if they were under a certain age. I forget what it was, like 18 or something. And he goes, yeah, so we wrote this song before you guys were even sperm. And then they start playing right then, you know, which I thought was like pretty hilarious.
It is kind of wild, but I think, I mean, if you think about it, Tim and I talked about this in the previous episode. Our age bracket has reached the point now where we're approaching middle age. We've got a little bit of disposable income, and nostalgia never goes out of style. So, you know, Tim and I, in 2 weeks, we're going to see Limp Bizkit, right? Like, if you had told me in 2019 that my first show coming out of the pandemic lockdown would be Limp Bizkit, I would have been like, Lyle, where's your address? I'm going to fly out there and punch you in the face. And yet here we are. It's coming up in 3 weeks, and Tim and I are going with the original lineup. Yep, we're going. But it's
wow, I didn't even know they were doing that.
The nostalgia piece never goes out of style, right? And I mean, if you do it tastefully, not like Slayer, where they're like, it's our last album and they tour. It's our last album and they tour. We're gonna break up and they just keep going, right? Like, take a couple years off, enjoy being old, see what happens, and then give it a shot.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think it speaks to just music in general, right? So like I'll have people reach out to me, like we were talking, we were really only a band in the like public sphere for like a year, maybe a little over a year, right? Um, and 20 going on 20 years ago. And I'll still have people reach out to me probably once a month on average, something like that. Just some random person will contact me and say like, "Oh my God, I loved your music so much." And, I listened to it all the time. And when I was in high school or whatever it was, right. Some formative period of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And music has a way of just doing that, right? Like you hear a song, like you probably hear a Limp Bizkit song and you go, it can take you right back to where you were when you
Yep.
listened to it before,
Yep.
right? Like music's very unique in that sense. And it's so much different than other forms of entertainment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe some movies, you can take you back to a time in your life or something,
Yeah.
but it's
But
not quite the
music
same.
is, music, it imprints somewhere in your memory where I can
Yeah.
tell you the song that played when I got my first tattoo. I can tell you the song I played, the first time I walked into Ozzfest and what was playing. Like
Mhm.
it is, you're right, it is transformative and it imprints on memory. Well, Lyle, listen, we're quickly approaching time and I want to be, I want to be respectful because some that you heard with Elias, like we got so excited that we're like, oh shit, he's got another one. So Lyle, if people want to find you, get in contact with you, where do they look? And then also, where can they find your music? If they want to check it out, where should they go? It's just the typical Spotify, Apple. Where do we go?
Yeah, I think it's available just about anywhere. But feel free to just pirate it because I don't get paid anything when you. I don't care. Yeah.
When I get home for that EP. So
Yeah. So no, but yeah, you can find it just about anywhere. Pressure 4-5. I think there's even some of the ambionic stuff on YouTube that I played.
Okay.
So you could check that out too. But yeah, I mean, most recently I've been working on, I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm working on a book currently and not about this period. Well, it may have a little stuff from when I was in the band in it, but mostly it's about my more recent life. So I have a daughter who's 3 who was born. She had a very traumatic birth and she has cerebral palsy, which is like a lifelong disability. And so I've been writing a lot about that. And so I'm writing a memoir style book about it. And I also write online every week. Every Saturday I have a post that comes out and it's sort of like, personal stories from my life. And sometimes they're about the band, sometimes about more recent things. But yeah, so you can find all that at lyle.substack.com. And then, yeah, just I'm Lyle McKeany, my full name, like on pretty much all the social stuff.
Okay, cool. And Lyle, when your book comes out, let us know. We will definitely have you back on. We'll do a kind of press tour release. We'll dive in. That would be a lot of fun. So once again, I want to thank you, Lyle, for taking time out of your busy day to come and chat with us. Everybody knows all the socials. I'm not going to go through the spiel. _podcast. Just find us. We are not the Christian rapper from the UK. Please keep that in mind when you try and join the Facebook group. We have I love all of our posters, but it's an interesting melting pot. We will leave it at that. So once again, on behalf of Tim, myself, I want to thank Lyle for joining. On behalf of Lyle, Tim, and myself, I want to thank all of you for listening. And until next time, this is New Breed saying cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.